We'd like to welcome you to Cache County Council meeting here on Valentine's Day, and well, we wish you all a happy Valentine's Day. Doesn't look like we've got a deep audience tonight so far, but maybe they'll all come in at once. So let's go ahead and we'll start with our opening by Council Member Nolan Gunnell.
I'd just like to say a few words on this Valentine's Day. I'm surprised we're not packed. I mean, what else could people do on a night free than come listen to us? But I have a lot of respect for the men and women who in this country serve in the military and the armed forces and who protect our freedom. And there's a quote that I have here. It says, "Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigue of supporting it." That was by Thomas Paine. And I thought that's very important. We have the freedom because of those men and women who have done so much to sacrifice for our lives, and I appreciate them. And I just want to, hopefully we can give them some love on this Valentine's Day for all of those who serve and sacrifice, and including the families. And so much gratitude to them. And with that, I'll give my opening remarks, continuing right now in the form of a prayer. Father in heaven, we come before thee this day and give thanks for this country which we live in. Father, we recognize those men and women who have sacrificed so much before, that we have reaped their sacrifices and benefit from that and the freedom and peace which we enjoy. We pray for those countries worldwide who are suffering from war and natural disasters, that they may be blessed and helped out in some manner. We're grateful for this freedom and the Constitution we have in this United States, and we're grateful to serve and help in some manner in this part of the country here in Cache County. We pray that we may administer and do those things according to the Constitution and serve well, and we give thanks for all that we have and we enjoy. And this I say and ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Now if you'll stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
See your stream.
Thank you, Councilman Gunnell. We appreciate that. Next on the agenda would be that we review and approval of the amended agenda that we should have there in our packet. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the amended agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimous. How about the minutes? Have we been able to read the minutes and any corrections, deletions, changes? Otherwise, we'll be happy to
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
move and seconded to approve the minutes. January 24th, 2023. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I abstain, I wasn't here.
One abstaining. Any opposed? Okay, they are passed, unanimous. Is there any report from a county executive? I believe he's out of town right now, but I don't see the deputy executive here, so we'll bypass him. We may give him a chance, we may not from here after. Let's go right to Bart Esplin under items of special interest. And he's running there, that's pretty good.
Well, you heard my instructions from Chairman Erickson. I promised to be quick. So first, I'm here tonight to give you an update on something that Alma and I spoke of several months ago, and that's an update on the generator that we was trying to get some FEMA funding for. So let me preface this. 2 weeks ago, we was facing minus 20 degrees temperatures throughout the valley, and there was a power outage on the west side of Logan, which knocked out power at the event center and many areas throughout the west side. At the time, we had a CMPO meeting going at the event center. Some of you were probably in attendance at that meeting. Could have been critical. Temperature started to drop rapidly inside the event center, and with no idea how long that was going to last. An emergency like that potentially could cause hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage if that power outage were to continue long term. freezing pipes and, you know, the damage that that could cause. So the event center is considered a backup for many different things, such as the jail, temporary warming center, emergency shelter, also a reunification center for the Cache County School District. Yet, in an emergency, we had no power. So, the update on the FEMA grant is we have been determined not eligible by FEMA because we don't meet the cost benefit threshold for the project. So what that means, bottom line is, at some point we're going to be asking this body for funding if that is the direction that we feel we need to go, which I obviously feel that it is. So that's an update. Are there any questions that I can answer?
What are we looking at, cost?
So 6 months ago, you approved a 25% match, which was going to be $125,000. I think $500,000 is way more than what it will actually cost, but we don't know. My initial ask would be $10,000 to get engineering done so we can find out what that actual ask is going to be.
Does that just run the event center, or is that for all of that in the fairgrounds? Or
That would just run the event center, but it would run it in its entirety, the complete building. Many generators, backup generators, will just run certain circuits. This would run the entire facility.
Okay.
Other questions?
How much was the grant that you were asking for?
So the total project cost was anticipated to be roughly $500,000. That was factoring in some extras because FEMA moves slow, and you know construction costs have been rising rapidly over the last couple of years. So I suspect we're in the 350 range.
Okay, and that was denied?
Yeah.
You said, okay.
Yep.
Okay, well then, will you do a little bit of research, and when we have the next budget opening, could you present that to us at that point, and we can work with it at that point? Would that be okay? That he brings that? Okay.
Okay, I will do that.
And then I know Bart and I, we've talked at other times that I think that's critical to have that center operational at all times because of other things that might happen. If it needs to be an emergency shelter or anything like that, I think it's critical to make sure we provide it as such. But if you'll get that information put together, engineering costs and things like that, we initially as we go, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, very good.
One question though.
Yes.
When we had emergency activation last year, in case of a natural disaster, we all met down at the jail, and there was talk that if something happened that we may use the event center as a backup. So would that bring any qualification for money from an emergency standpoint or anything?
You know, we listed all of those items on our application for that FEMA grant.
Still got
And,
down, huh?
and their view of that was the frequency was just not often enough to warrant that.
We just
Grant
don't
money.
have enough disasters is what you're telling us. I'm glad we don't,
thing.
and I'm glad we don't.
We'll take that.
So,
Okay, thank you.
appreciate that. Do I see Sheriff Jensen yet? Not yet. Let's go back to executive report. Anything from there?
Thank you. I have nothing to report tonight.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure you're covered down there. So let's go ahead, and we can actually, we should be able to set the public hearing, shouldn't we? We can at least set that one, even though it's not 5:30. We can at least set that one, and that just takes a motion.
As it's only listed as an estimate, you can.
Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll entertain a motion to set that public hearing for ordinance 2023-07.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moving second, we set the public hearing for March 28th, ordinance 2023-07 for vacating county road right-of-way along 8200 South Street, a portion thereof. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. That is then set. We have a couple other public hearings coming up in about 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and, boy, we're flying. This is good. You guys are going to be eating Valentine's here shortly, we hope.
Be with you in just a moment.
Are we on this one?
You on 9B?
For the hot iron storage rezone?
We're on 10A, aren't we?
10A.
We are on 10A, 2023-02, which is amendments to Title 17. Would you like to share some?
Sure would, okay.
If not, we'll go ahead and start asking questions.
Okay, so revisiting this item, this is applicant's request to amend the code that has gone through a review by staff, the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has recommended unanimous approval for the amendments that you see here. And I will share some contextual graphics, but this request came into focus as a 20-acre parcel upon dedicating right-of-way for an anticipated subdivision, would have just then dedicated enough acreage to dip below 20 acres and thereby not qualify to subdivide into 2 lots, 1 unit per 10 acres. And so the request was to consider amendment that the density, as you see defined here under 1707-040 general definitions, to remove the area and rights of way for roads from that definition so that that's not factored into the density calculation. And so a property with 20 acres or just above 20 acres dedicating right of way would not necessarily find themselves only to subdivide, no longer able to subdivide into 2 lots. And then for consistency between this definition of density, you note the term here that I'm highlighting that says non-developable, and for clarity in developable acreage, just to remove reference to areas dedicated to the public, such as parks and public right-of-way, to avoid any confusion that developable acreage or would not be considered the rights of way, or not confused with that density calculation. So just a little bit of contextual information here. Planning Commission was interested to explore what is the difference in homes and calculation in acreage. And so we looked at kind of a conceptual diagram showing quite a large area. This represents 310 acres. And if under the current code, where we deduct the right-of-way, if all of this was in fact on the left, public right-of-way, then the net acreage would be 290 net acres. You divide that by 10 as the base zone in the A10 context, and you'd end up with 29 homes. By comparison, if there was no right-of-way deducted in the density calculation, and that 310 gross acres divided by 10 was a gross calculation, then you'd have 39 homes. And so over quite a large acreage area, we're looking at only a difference of a couple of homes. Here's a RU5 context, and by showing you this graphic, I'm not suggesting that the county's moving down a path of mass rezones to RU5, but this is nonetheless a representation of what the difference might be between the current net acreage calculation on the left. So again, deducting the right-of-way acreage would reduce the developable acreage from 310 gross acres down to 285, resulting in 57 homes at that RU5 density of 1 unit per 5 acres, compared to a gross density of, gross calculation of 62 homes. So again, not too much of a difference. And then here's a possible cluster, hypothetically a cluster bonus context, that if folks were to take advantage of the cluster subdivision and reserve areas for preservation and ag remainder lots, that there again might be a very similar yield in homes or lots between their current net density calculation and the gross calculation. So that's just a little context, noting that Most of the subdivisions that we do see create private roads, and that does not require right-of-way dedication. Typically, the right-of-way dedication that we see in subdivisions is to widen the existing right-of-way to the current road requirement standards. So I hope that's helpful context, and happy to engage in discussion and answer any questions if I could.
Any questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Tim, I sat through the planning and zoning on this and heard that, and in the last week, I have probably received more calls on density and ADUs than I can take a stick at.
Okay?
So I'm proposing, and two other points here. I think in the context that was sent out to the council, it was talking that there was 15 feet that the citizen would give to the road. It's actually up to 33 or even more. Matt Phillips will back me up on some of these numbers. So that takes a wider approach of what the citizen has to give of ground. So I'm fine with that in A10. But I'd really like to suggest that the council and the planning and zoning have a workshop and we sit and look at the effects of RU2 and RU5. I've had 2 communities reach out to me and say that they're concerned because we've tried to keep the RU2s within a mile of a municipality. And so as we talk about this density, and we did say that if a citizen is building so many homes that road is private. However, after you get above 5 homes and what we're talking about on ADU has the scope or potential to change what that road does inside of that subdivision, and some of the municipalities are concerned about that.
Okay.
So my proposal is I'm fine with A10 on this density because it has very little impact to the acreage, but we get to RU2s and RU5s. Not only do we impact the density, but we also impact the adjacent communities who are going to have to deal with that subdivision if it's in their annexation path. So I appreciate what the planning and zoning has done. They've thought about this, but I would suggest we think a little bit more and delve and actually run some numbers, have Matt with us as we talk about that and we go over that. That's my concerns.
All right.
I think that makes sense, Nolan. I think it does impact communities if they're near annexation areas, and if we ignore roadways and the density calculation, it creates issues.
Questions, comments? I was under the impression that it was going to be just for A10.
Okay, and that was the original.
I didn't know that, well, I was worried that it would go down and affect the RU2 and RU5 because that really opens up some parameters.
Okay. Yeah, that was initial concept explored with the Planning Commission was just to be applicable to A10, and then started to draw some of these diagrams in response to questions, and they recommended the A10 or excuse me, RU5, RU2. Would it be council's direction to proceed with an amendment applicable only to A10, and then or
At some point, I don't see the impacts as bad on A10 as I do it on RU2 and RU5. So from my standpoint, I'm willing to support the planning and zoning on A10. And I was like Chair, I thought it really was just A10, but as I read into it, RU2 and RU5 come in there. And I want, and some of the guys said, hey, I'd be there tonight, but you've got me choosing between political and spousal. And they didn't want to fight with the spousal on Valentine's Day to be here to voice some of their concerns, so.
that's helpful to understand. And I could provide some language between now and a little later in the meeting for you to look at,
That'd be great. If
specific to
the
A10.
rest of the
Between
council,
now and when?
Just maybe a little later in the meeting when you take
Later
action.
in the meeting to
Yep.
bring this back up, that you'd make it very specific for A10.
Correct.
Mr. Chair? can I-
Yes, go ahead.
Dirk Anderson as acting right now as interim director of development services. Personally, I think it might be kind of obvious, but the average, when he showed, if you could go to the RU5, the average lot size with this in RU5 is only, so to say, 4.6 acres. And I know I'm just one citizen, but that's having 0.4 of an acre less in an RU5, it's a much bigger percentage of, each of those lots. And so A10, it's obviously much less. But I just wanted to point that out, that the 4.6 average lot size, if you do allow it in RU5, that seems like a bigger chunk, larger percentage, obviously, when you have to take and when you don't count it as developable acreage, it allows those lots to get small, maybe more smaller than we would want in an RU5, right? But in the A10 zone, it is, average lot size is 9.35, and that's just a smaller, they're closer to 10, so to say. So a lot of the guidance I get as Director of Development Services is that any administrative decisions that I have to make, it should still maintain the same residential nature of that zoning area. And so I think that in the A10, it just kind of still maintains the A10 feel. And so that, I just wanted to share that. So thanks.
So may I question, are you in agreement, or all that
Personally,
said?
A10, it makes a lot more sense without a whole lot more study.
Right.
Like if the council wanted to extend it and have it apply to the lower size zones, you could always do that at a later time.
And that's what I'm suggesting, is we have a workshop and
I agree with that.
really get into it.
Certainly.
I agree with that myself. So I worry I think there's other things that I believe we're even going to be talking about tonight that could dramatically change that RU5 or, RU5 and RU2 that, which we'll bring up here later, I'm sure. That, just by a little bit of change dramatically changes. So we'll be talking about that here in a few minutes. But any other questions that you'd have, Mr. Watkins, on this? Okay. Thank you. Let's go ahead and, let's see. If you don't mind, we're going to actually go back to Sheriff Jensen, because I know he can talk fast. And for 6B and C on capital expenses, and then sell of some cameras or something.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm sorry I was late. Thought I was on time, but you guys are talking fast because you want to go home for your Valentine's date, so I get it.
Don't you?
What's that?
You do too. We got your back
I
covered
actually
here.
forgot it was Valentine's Day till about 3:30, so I'm in as much trouble as anybody else here. Anyway, thank you for just giving me a few minutes today. I don't have any really big gee whiz things, no new fun programs or anything to talk about, just some things that are coming up that I think with the conversation we had in the budget committee the other day, and Cameron kind of outlining how all this ARPA money is and what the needs are for it, and now that there's an application process for it, I think it's exceptional, because I think I was really confused of how all that worked out initially and what pools were worth what. But also the budget committee meeting, we talked about long-term plans and long-term goals and long-term planning and capital projects, which I'm a huge fan of, being able to plan those things out long-term and see what we can do with those kind of things. But with that is some things I was going to put into the budget, and I think I've talked to some of you about, and I don't know if these few things fit into what this ARPA money can or can't be used for. But if I could I'll just run those past the council, just so you understand what it is it's coming from, because I'll do the application process through the budget committee. So I'll go through those shortly. There's another piece, and I just want to, this is more because I don't want anybody to think there's smoke and mirrors with how some other things are working. Cache County is part of LETPA, which is the Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Committee, which is a makeup of all the law enforcement agencies north of Davis County. There's a fire, LETPA is just a law enforcement piece of that. There's a fire group that's part of that. There's a hazmat group that's part of that. But what it is it's federal funds that come to the state for public safety type issues. And then the state pushes it out to regions to spend the money accordingly to what the committee decides what the region's needs are at the time. So LETPA, they're still working on 2019 projects. LETPA group has authorized spending those funds to the tune of about $150,000 to buy portable pole cameras in the event of large-scale events or different kind of things for public safety issues. The problem with the LETPA, and really, at least in the law enforcement, Rod could probably speak more to the fire side of things, but to be able to accept the money from the feds, every agency had I can't even say that, obtaining a cybersecurity certification. That's the only way an agency can accept funds from the federal government, and if you don't have this certification. We got our certification for Cache County in 2019, and most other agencies didn't. So with this 150,000 through the LATPA committee, they want to buy these cameras, but we're the only agencies that can accept the grant money. So what we were hoping and want the council's approval to do before we do anything that's goofy is to have that 150,000 come into the Cache County's budget, purchase the pole cameras, one of them which will stay in Cache County, the other ones will go to other counties in our region. All of them can be used by any agency who requests them. So there's no outlay of county funds, but there's got to be a way that the LATPA committee can accept the federal funds so the products can be purchased. Does that make sense? So that we're just looking for an approval from the council that the 150 is going to come in, but it's going to be buying things, and the actual things we're buying other than one product is going to be shipped out to the region, to another part of the northern region in Utah.
I think we can get we can actually vote for like an agreement with that, but then it would officially go through the budget hearing in March, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, the committee, since it's 2019 money, they just need to spend the money before the end of March. That's why I bring this to the council today, so when the budget opening comes, that everybody has an understanding of what the 150 is actually supposed to be used for.
is there anyone here that would feel like that he not pursue this? No. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So, and then we'll look forward to it, and I guess that first county council meeting in March, I believe, isn't it?
I'm not sure that, I think so, correct.
Right around there.
March 14th.
Okay.
The other things I was going to bring up is it deals with the ARPA funds, more locally kind of things, is we've been working pretty hard, and the council's been fantastic over the last 5 or 6 years. We've built money into the budget to, we built money into the budget to start doing maintenance, more maintenance type things on the sheriff's complex rather than just fixing a big problem when things explode and blow up. And we've been pretty successful at that. There's some things that either need to be built into the budget, which I'm happy to build into the budget over the next few years as funds are available, or if this ARPA money can work for some of it, that would be fantastic too. You guys just not make me have papers, that would be awesome. So the first thing that is a kind of a big deal is, I'm back to rooftop units again. So basically what the sheriff's office has is, there's probably a dozen different air conditioners or more on top of the jail complex that kind of feed into individual cells. But what all those rooftop units feed into is one main unit that's on top of the building, that's been there for 24 years, and we've spent thousands replacing that rooftop unit. Right now, we went the entire summer last year in most of the facility with no air conditioning because the rooftop unit's gone. It really can't be repaired anymore, and it keeps needing pumps and different circuits, which we're going to have to get fixed this year with or without the budget money or the ARPA money, because we can't go all summer in the jail without air conditioning again. That unit's about $287,000 to buy that unit. And I will certainly be happy to work it through the budget process, but if that's one of the qualifying things in either one of the pools for the ARPA money, it was kind of a one-time expense and one-time bought and done, I guess, until we need to hopefully don't wait 24 years to keep fixing the same old stuff. But that's one that the budget committee will see is for the rooftop unit for the jail. The other piece of it too, and this is a big one as well, is the jail security system. With all the doors now don't really have keys anymore. Everything's open by automatic locks and air locks, and our security systems, they're all 24 years old, and we've replaced a lot of it. We've upgraded the operating system when we can, but we're just at the point now there's not really a lot of upgrades that can be done. And even if we can do the upgrades, the hardware is not matching the IT part of things anymore. So to upgrade the entire jail system, we can do that in pieces. which would be about 70,000 a year for the next 5 years until we get the entire system replaced out, or to do it all at once if it does meet anywhere in these ARPA funds. That's about a $270,000 fix to upgrade the locking system and security systems inside the facility. So, and I'll do the application process for that. I'm just not exactly sure, even with the processes, what those two pools of money mean and what they can be used for and what they can't be used for, but I think other people have a lot better understanding that than I've got.
And Barbara, would you like to share what we're going to propose?
Go ahead.
Okay, we're looking at possibly even the next meeting having a workshop provided by Cameron, that he present the ARPA budget and then instruct and help us understand what those monies are available for.
Okay.
And so that'll help all of us, and that'll be a workshop probably before the county council meeting.
Yeah, that will be awesome. Like I said, I'm happy to do it either way, whether we have to run it through the budget and figure out that. But I was on the budget workshop before with that ARPA money, and I think at the time, the board that was involved was looking more so at like one-time projects.
Yeah.
I don't know, what I don't want to do is take away, with my plans or my projects, take away from what's already been assigned out to somebody else or another department or another project.
And that's exactly what we need to know.
Yeah, if
We need
my
to know where that budget is, what's going there, and so that we can get on top of it. We've had requests from several of the council members on that. so.
If my projects can work into that, that's great, but I don't want to take away from what somebody has already planned for from months ago when we started this conversation. So other than that, I don't have any great brand-new projects or anything cool. I'll give you the 10-second version of the animal shelter, 2 weeks.
I was just there.
Just
the
kidding.
I
Just
was there
kidding.
the other day.
It's, I turned the last bit of a paperwork in today. I think we should have at least our temporary occupancy permit from the city by the end of the week. There's still a couple little things that the contractor needs to come back and do, but they won't affect getting our temporary permit to get the facility open. So once I have the permit in hand, we'll work on some dates to get open, get some training done with the staff. Still want to have the open houses and stuff. It's just been kind of hard to plan to do those open houses and let people come see. It's like 2 more weeks, 2 more months, 2 more weeks. I promise 2 more weeks. I think now we're at the point we'll have a date, we'll have a permit in hand, and we can do a lot better planning for the next month on how we're going to open it and how we're going to showcase it and show it off. And love to have all of the council be there and be part of that as well. So not 2 more weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all. That's really, I'm just more of a heads up for everybody.
Appreciate that. It's a little bit past 5:30. Let's go ahead and I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing for 2023-04 hot iron storage rezone. Is there a second? Moved and seconded that we open that public hearing. Mr. Watkins, could you just share a little enlightenment there for us? And then we'll have those that would like to speak before or for it or against it or whatever needs to speak in the public hearing, we'll allow them to do so.
All right, for your consideration is a rezone request just located to the south and west of Smithfield. You see located here on our GIS mapping, the municipal area of Smithfield, and the subject parcel is this parcel here where you see existing storage units on a portion of the 8.77 acre parcel. And this is located about 501 west, 4600 north. There was a time when the A10 zoning allowed for conditional use permit for storage units. And so this is a remnant of that code, which is no longer in the books. And so the request is in fact to rezone the entire parcel from A10 agricultural to I industrial to allow for expansion of self-storage units. And I will turn on a layer that was part of the key consideration as the Planning Commission reviewed this. And it is the future land use planning. You see this brighter color, fuchsia color represents Smithfield City's future land use planning for light industrial. However, they are not at this time, prepared to expand services in this area, and that would be applicant-driven, and that would require partnership in terms of extending services to service future city growth in this area. And having coordinated that with the city and received that feedback, there was not opposition from Smithfield City. And upon review and recognizing that 4600 North requires only minor improvements for this use, the Planning Commission recommended to the council to consider approval of this rezone request.
Okay. Anyone that would like to speak in behalf of this, for, against? Go ahead and come up here.
I don't need to speak, I'm here for it, it's our project.
Well, if you'd like to come up and speak, you could come up here. You could grab the well, don't grab the microphone, but you could speak at the microphone, just tell us your name and hearing. Okay, go ahead and just say your name before, would you, so that we can have it on record. And
My name is Marvin F. I'm one of the members of the hot iron storage. And yeah, we just got a bunch of clients calling, wanting to expand it, so we're going to meet our clients' needs. We like to and expand the storage units there. And I think it's pretty much been explained very well, so thank you.
okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Moving second, we close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Unanimous, so we'll go ahead and close that public hearing. Let's go ahead and go to public hearing, ordinance 2023-05, comprehensive general plan amendment. Tim, you want to share any information on that? Please do not read the whole thing to us.
Glad you clarified that. All right, what I'd like to do is just share maybe a brief recap from our review of this a few weeks ago, as well as share maybe some clarifications, perhaps where there's maybe been some misunderstanding, as well as some details that I think could use some refinement and potential revision in terms of this final draft. So we've talked about the effort to engage as many people as possible. There was outreach to the entire community, and the little flyer that you see here was sent in particular to property owners in the county unincorporated area owning 5 acres or more. This is the best summary graphic that we were able to generalize in terms of where the feedback was coming from. There was a question about this raised in the last discussion or hearing, and so this graphic provides a little more perspective in terms of where the feedback is coming from relative to the population. So what you're looking at in the black text is the percentage of participants, of those approximate 1,000 participants, the region from where that feedback came from relative to the percentage of population. And so the green areas represent where that percentage exceeded, of participation exceeded the percentage of population. Red areas where there was a lower percentage of participation than the percentage of population. So that's at least some additional insight and perspective that might be helpful. And we've talked about how the general plan is the primary document for the land use policies and recommendations, whereas the regional collaboration plan sets up the framework for continuing discussion with municipalities about coordinating growth, trying to make good informed decisions. And then the urban and rural area assessment and cost of services planning scenarios provide information and perspective for ongoing regional collaboration. The regional collaboration plan and the cost of services planning assessment are not necessarily the policies of the general plan, but they are information for review and ongoing discussion. The draft future land use map is in the county unincorporated valley area, predominantly recommends an A10 zone as the base property right. There are some areas of existing unincorporated locations such as Benson, Petersboro, Avon that are designated as potential places for services, maybe civic, maybe rural type commercial uses, but doesn't necessarily suggest that there be higher density there, but those types of conversations could continue as to how they'd like to define those communities in the future. The hatched areas represent anticipated growth areas adjacent to municipalities, where the county and those municipalities could explore land use compatibility, explore what appropriate standards might be in place, and the county continue to understand the timing and the land use goals for growth and development of those communities, and to continue to coordinate those together. I would like to provide an important clarification. This is a statement in the plan that I did a little fact checking and found that it's not true. That the 1991 State Enabling Act mandated consistency. That is true, but it's no longer in the state code.
That
So,
was page 6.
page 6.
Yes, I have, got that one up right now.
Had that one ready. Thank you.
I was actually loaded for bear, but go ahead.
Well, I accept that should not be in our general plan, and that a potential refinement could be to state it is an advisory policy document that provides guidance for potential county code amendments. But there is not a state requirement that there be consistency between the land use ordinance and the general plan. So we'll recommend taking that out. One minor edit that might be considered is that a regional collaboration plan could be listed first in this list of companion documents, as the cost of services plan and the urban rural area assessment, they provide additional information to support countywide regional collaboration planning efforts. And that's the text that could be updated there in the lower right. And this is just a recap of how to interpret the goals and policies of the plan, that they are limited to the extent that they are feasible and appropriate for the county to carry them out, and to the extent legally permitted by federal and state law. And the policies do not indicate an irreversible commitment of the county funds or staff resources. Rather, such policies and measures reflect a level of county consideration when financially feasible and appropriate. And I think in reviewing the policy statements, there are many words such as explore, continue to study, and there are recommendations of providing guidance, but do not necessarily dictate or attempt to dictate a certain direction. And similarly, these types of graphics that are shown in the implementation section of the plan are just ideas to further explore, such as A10 development with the what happens if rezoning occurs to 2 and 5 acre rezonings compared to incentivizing a cluster development pattern. These ideas can be further studied, but they are not mandated in the plan or attempted to be mandated, and more flexible cluster development that might involve non-adjacent property owners, and how to coordinate these new ideas with the nearby communities is recommended for further study and exploration. And that's somewhat mentioned here, that the general plan's vision and goals can be fortified and realized through the creation of additional plans, studies, and programs. Examples of these potential efforts are provided in the implementation section. And again, that these are listed as examples of potential efforts. And under regulatory tools, that regulatory tools can be evaluated and applied when relevant and applicable, and there's examples to consider. So I just wanted to emphasize the potential nature of these recommendations, and that they may be deemed desirable in the future with future study, or some variation that we hadn't anticipated in the general plan. So I believe those are most of the updates that I would highlight to you, and happy to entertain any questions or comments at this time.
Okay, let's go ahead and we'll open it up for public comment. That public hearing here, we'll open that up. Go ahead, and anyone that would like to speak about this? If you'd come up here, state your name and let us have it.
Careful what you say.
Yeah, I know.
My name's Janelle Seeley. I'm a resident of Providence. I admittedly have not read the entire general plan, so I'll just state that ahead of time. because it's an arduous task. So I know it's lots of pages, and you guys put in a lot of effort on that. My question about the general plan is, how does the regional collaboration plan integrate with the cities within the county? I just want the vision for the county to be something that supports the taxpayers, not just of the county, but the taxpayers within the city. Because, you know, the amount of property tax that goes to the county versus a city is equivalent. So do the services that are provided from the county reflect that? So going forward, I would hope that the county would take more of a support role for cities than maybe it has done in the past. And I know, and I'm just here speaking as a citizen. I serve on the city council for Providence. But in that capacity, we updated our general plan that hadn't been done for quite some time, like you guys are doing. And sometimes it takes a big pivot and a shift from what's historically been done to what might be the best plan going forward. I would hope you consider that perspective. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak? Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moving second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, is there any questions anyone would like to share or ask of Mr. Watkins?
I have a question. Tim, thanks for your work on that. I was contacted this week by 2 municipalities. The red line that you struck out, I think, will answer some questions that some of the municipalities were hitting me with. They're appreciative of the general plan, but they didn't want it to be the driving factor of all ordinances down the road, because they have, again, this is the municipality saying, okay, if you do an RU2, but you cluster, that may not mesh with what the feeling of the municipality is having. So if you could send me that red lined out so I can talk and get that to the municipalities, that may help me answer of those on the south end of the county that I've been talking with.
Certainly. What I'll do is update the presentation as, with all of these red lines, and we put it back on, sorry. And put it in the same shared folder that there are links
That
to.
would help, because they too said they wanted to be here tonight, but somehow Mrs. overrode what political was doing, so I don't understand that, because I'm here.
Yes,
so-
you do.
Yeah.
And I did have a conversation with a community member that raised a question, and I think in part some of the graphics in the presentation may have indicated, maybe not been fully understood in terms of the intent of the graphics. So for example, here in open space driven development, but if the concern is that the location of that development is located next to a municipality rather than further away from the municipality, that needs to be carefully considered.
Yeah.
Where does the clustering occur, and how intense, and how can it be supported?
That's what they were talking about as far as septic, sewer, whatever else is working on there, how they derive that plan for it. And
Indeed.
so I love the plan, I'm glad it's there, but I didn't want it to be the thing that set the tone for ordinances in the county. And obviously that comes from the council, but it can be there, but that redlining, striking out, helps those municipalities that contacted me, and I think that will be something good I can take back to them.
Wonderful. And could I respond to the
Oh, yeah, you bet.
question and comment? And really appreciate your interest in the holistic approach throughout the county. And there is a unique model here in Cache County of a countywide planning office that was established in 1992 at the request of partner municipalities wanting to coordinate growth together and understand regional impacts or decisions made in one community, how that might impact another community, looking at everything from housing to economic development to connectivity, transit, open space, trails. All of these are of great interest to communities. And so the countywide planning office, and in fact, we are interviewing soon to fill that position. And we're looking forward to filling that position again. Much of the recent focus of the countywide planner was focused on helping this plan get through the public engagement process, looking at the feedback, which, as we saw in this earlier map, came from around the valley, folks in the municipalities as well as in the county unincorporated area. And upon adoption and completion of this plan, the countywide planner will be able to spend more time exploring land use studies, policies, goals that might be shared by some of the municipalities and lend that service that would be focused more on the municipalities and not just the general plan. And so that's a very unique program and service, as well as the GIS mapping that is updated regularly, that includes the city land uses and provides a resource to help coordinate planning decisions and context. So the countywide planning program is referred to in part regional collaboration. That's what countywide planning does, is support those conversations between communities, and the county does not want to pretend to want to plan for the municipalities, but to support and assist and coordinate. And in fact, I believe it was May, we visited the communities in 4 different locations, different parts of the valley, and asked questions about priorities for land use topics to study. Water use definitely came up as an important topic. Housing, trails was of great interest, and learning more about the GIS services that are available. So we look forward to continuing that service and stepping it up following the adoption of this general plan.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Just a question, and I emailed the beginning of this question to Tim earlier this week, and we did have some dialogue, but I did have an additional follow-up
Please.
that we hadn't been able to resolve. So my question was about, well, let me preface with, anytime we're talking about planning and countywide planning and looking at how we would be looking to the future for what development would take place in the county that is adjacent to existing municipalities. And then there is a supporting map or overlay that goes with it. I've found in the past that sometimes the annexation boundary agreements between municipalities may not always be remembered by the current councils that are in place back when a document like that was adopted 20 years ago. And so that was the purpose for my question, Tim. But what I was asking is, when laying out plans and in any intent for planning in the general plan, were the existing annexation boundary agreements that are on the books factored in? And the answer, Tim's answer was effective and I believe correct, but I think it might have also been a little incomplete, and so that's why I'm asking now.
Sure.
Sorry that it kind of puts you on the spot, but the maps do show that the future geographic area for municipalities was considered and documented. But then the note where you said, but some communities' annexation policy plan areas overlap with another community, the annexation boundary agreements address just that concern. So my question to you is there possible that we can link in the general plan and any county planning or community planning maps the actual annexation boundary agreement documents that one city and another have made between each other? Like, we can sit down and talk about it, but is that a possibility? Because 5 years from now, nobody that was on any of the city councils that passed an annexation boundary agreement will be there, and it'll be up to anybody looking at documents that may or may not be the county's documents for guidance. And if we don't have those annexation boundary agreements, we're going to potentially trigger disputes, because one city's zoning would appeal to the property owner more so than another, potentially. And so they're going to want those agreements to be honored in certain cases where current councils may not have any clue what the landowner is talking about.
Thank you. Great question. I'll be the first to admit that I'm more familiar with the declared areas and the mapping of those, and recognize that there is some overlap. I'm less familiar with actual agreements as to how to address those between communities. So, but absolutely in terms of publishing this general plan, there would be a printed version as well as a story map version. And a story map is a kind of a zoom in, zoom out map with pictures and call out boxes and very interactive. And that's the definitely type of environment where links to such resources can always be updated. And
And so the
Yes.
reason for asking that question in relation to this agenda item is simply, if we adopt this now, and we haven't yet identified all those annexation boundary agreements, can we add that later? Just as another layer on the map, if you will? Or would that have to come and be reapproved as part of the general plan?
I'll share my opinion, and there may be others that have a similar, different opinion. My sense is anything that reflects the current status of planning could be linked to. We could also do a story map for regional collaboration that becomes a resource for the municipalities to kind of see the regional context of different topics and studies. And especially in that more living, breathing regional collaboration document could absolutely continually update that document with links and resources.
Can I put something here? I attended 2 communities on my south end who were talking about their annexation boundary and their plans. But they state, okay, this is only a plan because access to water changes their annexation plan and where they're going, so that they really can't solidify this is where we're gonna annex until they know what water resources are gonna drive them from that standpoint. So to me, that would mean that should be flexible in there from the county. I see what Councilman Hurd is talking about, but we also have to give the municipality latitude for adjustment on their annexation plan.
Yeah, so the annexation boundary agreement is a agreement that two or more municipalities would enter into to basically establish which community has the first right of refusal when the annexation is requested. And so, yeah, the autonomy and everything is all factored into that process and the legalese of that document.
Okay.
There's only 2 that I'm aware of in the county, but I don't claim to know that that's all that's out there, but I know that there's a very significant agreement between Hyde Park, Smithfield, North Logan, and Logan. And that one, the map here suggests different boundaries in the future.
What I think could be done is something I recall in a previous municipality is that it was suggested in plan language, and this could be just the addition of one sentence stating that the future land use map may be updated without amendment to reflect the current municipal boundaries or updating of municipal boundaries, annexation areas, such that wouldn't necessarily have to be an amendment every time a municipality makes a change, but to be aware of that changing context.
So we can move forward, we can adopt this, and then you and I we can dig into it, find out what the annexation boundary agreements are that are out there, link them in later, make everybody aware, but it's not another public hearing and another approval triggered by that.
My opinions wouldn't have to be, and look to any other
I
decisions.
want to make sure I understood that clearly, because it may or may not change my vote.
Mr. Chair, may I make
Yeah, please do.
a quick comment? In addition, for the council's benefit, I think definitely not more important than the official documents that are adopted as the general plan, but very important would be just that you all keep your link to the folder that has all those general plan documents in it, and we would make sure to include maybe a document that just says, this really isn't officially part of the general plan, but here are all the links to the local, plans, and then that way you all have like really easy access to them as well. So that folder is just a good.
I found that annexations between 2 cities, there's always that sandwich point. And one says it's ours, but then all of a sudden the landowner says, you know what? No, I'm going this way. They have that right.
They do. With an annexation boundary agreement, though, there are conditions where if one municipality is not as favorable to the developer or the landowner as the
Yeah.
other, they can work it out and
And
come to
then,
agreement.
and then
The
if there's
value of it, just as an example, if you've seen the boundary between North Logan and Hyde Park and how that is a jigsaw puzzle, And the purpose of an annexation boundary agreement is to just say, just kind of draw a line. It's not a hard, fast, 100%, but the idea is in considering the convenience of being able to provide water or other services, or, the flow of the sewer line would make it so that this land that's in the county currently can't be serviced by Smithfield, but could be by Hyde Park, but it's right up against the boundary of Smithfield, as an example. So those things are taken into consideration beforehand, so that when the landowner says, hey, I want to look at doing something different with my land in the future, there's some of those things already laid out to say, okay, here's the considerations you may want to be aware of up front.
May I make a suggestion? Could you make these changes that we've talked about tonight, the red lines and everything, and in 2 weeks, have everything that point? Would that, or what do you feel? Do you feel like we need to move on it tonight, or just you want to make the changes and then?
I'd like to show those municipalities that change,
Okay.
so that they had a voice on them.
Okay. And then in 2 weeks, it won't be a public hearing. It'll just be a matter of, we'll bring it up and then we can finalize it and go from there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Let's go with, let's see, there's our 2 public hearings. Ordinance 2023-06.
Good evening. This is a revisiting of the Cache Open Space Advisory Committee. The last time we spoke, you expressed some concerns about the evaluation standards of the committee and wanted to make sure that it was explicit that final authority rests with the county council for those evaluation standards. That change has been made in section 7, 276-7C. The county council retains final approval authority on evaluation standards and their application by the COSAC in the selection process. Also, there were some questions about if we were sure that the county executive is the appointing authority, and I just wanted to direct your attention to Title 17, Chapter 53, Part 3, Section 317, Part 1, where it states that the appointment of a person to fill a position on a board, committee, or similar body whose membership is appointed by the county shall be by the county executive with the advice and consent of the county legislative body. This particular statute does not make a distinction for whether or not it's an advisory body or otherwise. So that change was also reflected in this ordinance. If there are any questions, this is the ordinance that I have.
I have one.
Yes.
Just clarification that because it didn't really make sense to me in 76-4 under A, it says that 4 of the voting members will be appointed by the county executive with the advice and consent of the county council. But then the next sentence starts and says 3 voting members will be selected from the general public, but it doesn't clarify those will also be selected by the county executive.
That's correct.
Okay, you just might want to add that, because when I read that, I thought it just says 3 members will be selected from the general public, but it doesn't really say how they'd be selected or by who. And so that, to me, that was a little confusing. So you might just add that in also by the county executive, just those words so that it's clear.
Sure, we can make that change.
That was the only thing that I saw that was just for clarification.
So if the council wanted to pass the ordinance and include in your deliberation with that change, then I can make that change and we can get it updated before final entry.
Your very first sentence in that 276-4 shall be composed of 7 voting members, 2 non-voting ex officio members appointed by the county council. 7 voting members and 2 appointed by the council.
That's right.
So
Okay.
9 total.
I thought you just said the appointments would come from the executive.
That's right. We'll have to make that change.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I was thinking.
No, I
I've got-
agree with you.
Other questions?
So just for clarification, just for me, so we're going to take out 4 of the voting members will be appointed by the county executive? We're gonna
No.
leave that in there?
Yeah, just add in where, on the very next sentence where it says 3 voting members will be selected from the general public, and it's just an enclosed sentence. That, they just need to add clarification that those will also be appointed by the county executive.
Correct. And that first sentence will also be changed, striking the appointed by the county council.
We're not gonna appoint anybody.
Well, now you're talking they're appointed by the county council or by the executive, and then they are ratified at the county council.
That's
right?
correct. There, with the advice and consent of the county council.
That's what, that's critical.
That's the requirement under state code, and that's what we'll be following.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted it to be very clear, like.
Thank you.
So, okay. Other questions on that?
So do we want to vote on this tonight and just say with that, with those changes, or do we want to wait until the changes come?
No, we can add those changes and we can pass it with those changes.
I'd be comfortable doing that.
You'd like to make that motion then?
Sure, I would move that we approve ordinance 2023-06 with the amendments to paragraph 2-76-4 in section A that we discussed. Is that clear enough?
Is there a second?
That works.
For the minutes, could you just restate what those changes are? So
Yes. Yes, the changes are in the first sentence. The second clause, appointed by county council, will be struck. Are you writing it down? Okay.
No, it's on.
Okay. And then in the sentence, 3 voting members will be selected from the general public. The clause will be added also appointed by the county executive with the advice and consent of the county council. That's all. Okay. Thank you.
Was there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded that we approve ordinance 2023-06 with the amended changes in paragraph 2-76-4. Is there any discussion? I have one discussion. I think the reason that it was originally drafted like this was that in the voting process and when it was as it was taken out to the public, that was a concern by the public, and it was shared to the public that they would be appointed by the county council. And so this is a change to what was actually shared to the public in that process to get this voted for. So that might raise some dander on things, but we got to also, I guess, go by code. Dang it. Anyway, and the reason that code always gets us every time, guys, on everything. So, but we got to go by that. So if there's no more discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. So we're talking 4-3. So, okay. Thank you very much. It does pass. Let's go ahead and go to initial proposals for consideration of the ordinance 2023-04 hot iron storage rezone. Any discussions there that?
Mr. Chairman, I would waive the rules and make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-04 hot iron storage rezone.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded that we waive the rules and pass ordinance 2023-04 hot iron storage rezone. Any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Let's go to ordinance 2023-05, updating the general plan. We've actually probably agreed to push that to next meeting. So that one will go ahead. Let's go to resolution 2023-03. This is a new one.
We don't have to make a motion to move that to the next meeting, do we?
It'll actually just stay on it until the next meeting, which will carry to it, so. On that, as we're moving that general plan, when you make those changes, could you make sure that that gets in the packet?
Absolutely.
So we don't have to go back to previous meetings to find it.
Yes.
Just the new general plan, so thank you.
Thank you.
Send it to Micah.
Just about. So I got to pull up that resolution. Thanks for your patience, kind of jumping from one item to the other here. I'd like to put the resolution up on the screen. Here we go. Okay, it's ready. There we go. Okay, this resolution comes to you, and I wish it was coming to you a month ago, and I'll take responsibility for this coming to you in really the last hour possible. This is a state-required amendment to the 2022 amendment required for moderate income housing plan, which counties above 5,000 in population are required to apply. And the update should include an implementation plan as well as reference to the new state strategies that are listed. And they list a dozen or so of these strategies, as well as an implementation plan or language of how to implement these strategies. And so this is an attempt to bring to you a polished product that really exhibits much of what the county is already doing in terms of addressing moderate income housing, but a resolution that could update the 2019 existing county plan, moderate income housing plan, but then provide the strategies as well as implementation goals. And these would be measurable goals that could then be provided in a 2022 state-required update as well as subsequent annual updates. And so this was somewhat of a challenging exercise and required some coordination amongst staff and Chairman Erickson, as well as the state coordinator for the moderate income housing reporting. But we do, as Cache County, have on our books an accessory apartment or accessory dwelling unit, and we are working with the Planning Commission. I believe we'd like to work joint Planning Commission Council to explore amendments to this ordinance. But a state-required update to this ordinance is that there cannot be a size limit to an internal accessory dwelling unit. And so that's a needed update to our code, and we're just stating that that's in the works, and suggested that the anticipated time frame for updating the ordinance could be June 2023. And then that the county would track the number of ADU zoning clearance permits and building permits on an annual basis and report those as part of the required housing report to the state. I mentioned previously for the general plan that the county has a unique program of countywide planning, and that in fact regional collaboration plan is in our code in Title II, that the Planning and Zoning Division provides countywide planning services to coordinate with other local governments. And so highlighting this as a service to assist regionally in exploring how to implement, where appropriate, higher density or new moderate income residential development in commercial or mixed use zones near major transit investment corridors. Acknowledging that in the county we do not provide those urban services, but we do provide countywide planning support to lend to communities in terms of technical planning assistance through regional collaboration, and that can involve the Cache Valley Transit District and other partners, as well as the municipalities, as well as stakeholders. And so that is strategy G, to amend land use regulations to allow for higher density near major transit investment corridors. And one example that's provided by way of reporting and the plan update is Cache County had the opportunity to work with Hyde Park City. And this is referenced under strategy F, which is very similar. It just states exploring moderate income residential development in commercial and mixed use zones. It's just with less emphasis on transit. But in late 2021 and into 2022, countywide planning supported Hyde Park City with a town center study, and that was referenced as part of the general plan update process, the public hearings, or rather the initial public open houses. And that has influenced a corridor along the future Wolfpack Way that it will soon develop, and that the general plan future land use map supports mixed use development in that area. And so Cache County would continue to meet with partner municipalities on at least an annual basis to identify priority areas to study and topics to study, including moderate income housing goals and strategies. And then Cache County would also continue as an implementation strategy to provide the GIS mapping and update as general plans are updated by municipalities, as rezones occur, that the county would continue to provide that mapping resource such that it's regionally referenced and supporting the local governments. So that is a suggested resolution attachment that would in effect update the, I'll just provide this cover of our moderate income housing plan, and just state on that plan that this was amended in 2023 by this resolution, refining and updating strategies for implementation as required by the state code and attached as an appendix. So be happy to respond to any comments, questions, and explore how this could be refined.
Go ahead.
So we're talking about ADUs, and we're trying to meet this moderate income plan. I had some people reach out to me also who had attended the League of Cities and Towns, and there had been talk about some other methods of meeting that. Have we as a county looked at other ways rather than ADUs? I get the feeling that an ADU, an A10, RU2, RU5 is going to change the landscape of this county in a significant manner that I'm not believing we have done enough justification or study to.
Well, I can share that we have relatively few ADUs applied for. Whether there are some ADUs that are not applied for and applied without permits is another question that we don't have an answer to, but less than 2% of our single-family dwelling permits have included requests for an internal or attached accessory dwelling unit.
But at this time, any owner-occupied house can rent out their basement or anything else. So we've got something in there, but ADU, or in a detached ADU, to my feeling and from what I'm hearing from some of my constituents, is a landscape change that I don't think we've studied the ramifications strong enough yet.
Indeed, the detached accessory dwelling unit, and there's not a commitment here or expectation that we adopt or amend that ADU or accessory apartment ordinance to include detached accessory dwelling units, but acknowledging that we do have accessory apartment in our code. It is applied for rarely, I would say, and the state code requires that if it's an internal ADU that there not be a size limit within the footprint of the primary dwelling, and we currently have a 1,000 square foot limit. So at least becoming compliant with state code.
So are there, do you know, have you seen other counties, what other ways are meeting this moderate income level? Are you saying ADUs is the only path down there, or is there other situations that can be considered?
Looked at Box Elder County, for example, and they previously for a number of years have had detached accessory dwelling units, and to become compliant with state code, they added the internal state required accessory dwelling unit. And then they have a policy that they do not and will not charge impact fees related to accessory dwelling units. So theirs was primarily focused on ADUs to meet those part of the state strategies. The only other state strategies that I could see as applicable to Cache County were related more to what's listed here as our countywide planning services. But I did not say, most of the other strategies appear to be focused on the infrastructure that can support the higher density housing and the transit that's encouraged near those areas.
Could I make a comment, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
to help with this? What you're being asked to adopt tonight, however, is our fulfillment of this year's commitment. This requirement from the state requires us to actually update it every year. And so even just with us looking at it, like with you considering the code and the planning commission having send it to you and that kind of thing, helps us fulfill our plan for this year. And if at the end of that discussion with workshops and such, the county council is like, we don't think that what is it, E? That one is, yeah, that one's E. We don't like that one. We'd
That's
rather
spooky.
take a different one of the suggested, what are they called, strategies that they list on their website instead. And so that could be part of the workshops this year, as well as saying, going over this moderate income housing requirement from the state and giving the council all of the options.
Well, I just think there needs to be, I hate to use the word in-depth, but this is just hitting the council at this time. And to me, there are ramifications that I haven't even considered. I mean, I called and talked to some people about, for instance, in the county right now, if you do a subdivision and you build a road, a private road, and you go above 5 houses, you've got to meet Cache County code on those roads. So if I'm sitting with 4 houses on that road right now, and each of those or 2 of those build an accessory dwelling unit or a dwelling unit, I've impacted the ADT, the travel on that road, to the point that we haven't considered. We also had the discussion in planning and zoning, as we're talking about these ADUs, we don't have the answer from the Utah Water Resource is whether it needs to be a separate water right or what goes on there. There was confusion, there was 2 different answers.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, as a council and what I've seen and what I've heard from others, let's put the brakes on and think about this for a bit before we just say, well, yeah, that's what we do and meet the state thing, because if we do this, it's hard to unwind.
I understand, and I understand the real-time conversation that's underway and the challenges, but at least the effort to collect that information and look at it comprehensively is very key. I would point out that this draft language suggests that that there is not a commitment to the detached accessory dwelling units, and that if a time frame of June 2023 is too tight, that could be moved later, sometime later this year. And if in reporting it is not resolved or amended this year, then the report would reflect as much and state that more time is needed, more study is underway.
Well, if you do the ADUs, and we need to understand the impact on our roads, we need to understand the impact of current subdivisions and what they've done roadwise. We're looking from way up in outer space down here, and we haven't got into the details enough to say really what's going, and I just think that we really need to sit back and study this, whether it's a workshop, whether we keep going. There's just some things here that I have some high questions, and as I've reached out and talked to other people and others, and again, 2 municipalities are saying this affects their environment as when they consider annexing somebody in who has an apartment there that yet maybe in that zoning part of their community is not part of their zoning. So they're saying to me, this has ramifications for the communities and a bunch of different things that they would like to have some say and talk about as well. So that's my point. I mean, there's 6 other council members here who have an opinion, but I'm just saying, let's pause and think about this for a bit.
Sure. And it's my understanding that at a minimum, the county is required to have internal accessory dwelling units, as state code recently amends and requires of the county.
Okay, so given that, then we should work from what that requirement is to build out so that we understand that both as a planning commission, as a council, and also the community, our citizens and our municipalities as to how that's going to be affected.
Okay, I've got a couple, just kind of backing up a little ways. Okay, you mentioned that this has to be done annually. And the reason that this is even turned in is because there is some monies tied to it that helps us in transportation and these corridors, all these, basically, without this being in there, we don't get the money, right? Without doing this.
We're not
Now,
Could I respond to that?
well,
Give you.
let me go one further, because it'll probably stimulate another question.
Yeah.
And so every year, I have never, and I've been on the council how long? Well, too many years, I guess, but I've never seen one of these ever come through a county council for approval that we then send it in. And apparently, we're dealing right now with the 2023s, which was supposed to be sent in. It was sent in, but it was rejected, and we're having to redo some things. But I know in discussions that we had, it was said that there was county council approval on the one that was sent in, and I've never seen it. And I'm a little disheartened that it was said that way, because there was not county council approval of the previous document, which we haven't even seen. But we've never seen one, but it's hard to say yes, that we've approved it when we never even saw it and never did approve it. But it was, I guess, rejected, and now we're having to redo it, and then our time frame to redo it is very short now.
Yeah, that is a concern. I guess my quick response is,
Could I-
please, yes.
The state code says that the director of UDOT is not allowed to award any monies from the TIF, and then there's a couple of other things within the TIF, in the next coming fiscal year. I'm not sure if we really confirmed with our contact at the state, but for the state, that would be starting July 1 of 2023, going through July 1 of 2024. There is an understanding, though, however, that those monies are applied for, and I'm not sure if we have applied for any of those anyway. And so it's not, you're right, we wouldn't be able to do it. Now, Jeff Gilbert has mentioned to us that this year is actually an interesting year because UDOT doesn't always open up those applications, but they are doing that this spring and summer. So, we do apologize. Tim apologizes. I apologize again as interim director over there that we got that email, and then Tim, we were just buried and it was not intentional. with all of that. And
But even the original that was sent in,
yeah, I'm wondering if it was just planning commission that saw it. It was Lauren that would have done the presentation. She would have come before you if it was done here. And so that's,
okay, setting that aside, now we're to this point.
yeah.
And I understand that if we pass this resolution tonight, then we've still got to go through and make sure we do the ordinances, but they can actually be a little bit different even than this. So we could address these concerns that Chairperson Gunnell has and others may have, that we can still change that. That ordinance doesn't have to be perfectly according to this resolution, right?
That's correct.
It'll make them happy though at the state.
That's what I'm saying is that, yeah. In the conference call that we had the other morning, I wanted to ask some questions, but I thought I better not. Because when you're dealing with the state, fewer questions, the better. So.
But may I ask, if we do pass this, how hard is it to unwind? I would rather be informed before I say yes to anything, and I just feel like I'm uninformed as this goes right now.
Yes. Well, it was shared with us that if there's a change in course, then that's part of the report to say, here's why there's a change in course compared to what we had planned and our implementation strategy.
We haven't even gotten much participation or input from our citizens yet on this ADU or what's going on, and I just feel like that would be something I would like to hear before I go ahead and say, here's my vote, and I haven't listened to the constituents much on that.
Well,
Correct.
tonight's, if I understand right, Tim and Mr. Chair, tonight's vote on the resolution would actually commit the council to look at it and get that participation back from
Well,
the
I'm committed
citizens.
as a pig is in a butcher shop because it's here, so.
But
Yeah,
not
it-
necessarily committing the council to, or the county to direction on where you're going with those.
Well, it's, we're looking as the power of a resolution versus the power of an ordinance. You know, apparently a resolution, what we're looking at here is, gives us the direction to start putting the ordinance together. And so how the resolution is not is not 100% binding, we can, and if we do change from those, then a follow-up addendum letter or something would be sent to the state, and hopefully they would approve that with it, right?
Correct.
But nowhere in this resolution are we talking any other way of meeting this housing thing, such as other ideas, talking outside of there. I mean,
Apparently it does. She said it was fine.
okay,
So this meets our state requirement if we pass it tonight, and then we can massage it and keep working on it.
We would file a report by Thursday to meet that extended deadline for reporting. One point of clarification is annually required is a report. Amending the moderate income housing plan is not required annually, but it's an option that we always have to amend that plan.
Other comments, questions? Any thoughts, motions?
I'll move to approve resolution 2023-03.
There's second.
I'll second it.
Moving second that we approve resolution 2023-03. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving?
So this is the initial consideration,
Oh,
so we need to waive the rules.
Move to suspend the rules.
I will suspend the rules.
Thank you.
I
So,
accept the amendment and still second.
moved and seconded that we suspend the rules and pass resolution 2023-03. Is there any comments, any discussion? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
nay.
And I will vote in favor with a strong direction as to really look at it. So motion passes 6-1. Let's go ahead real quick down to any, now I noticed January 2023 building permits. Micah, did you have anything special on that one? That's just basically the list of what we have.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting. We have our language ready for you to consider on.
Yes.
On the amendments to Title 17, general definitions, density and developable acreage.
To specifically say, if you got that, you could put that up real quick.
Thank you.
Don't mean to rush you too much, but it is Valentine's Day. At least, can we use that for an excuse at least once? Okay,
Mr. Chair, could I explain the difference between this and what you saw earlier tonight, please?
yeah.
Excellent.
Do you know more than him?
Um,
Okay, go ahead.
In
Loaded question.
the language involved in your packet, immediately under density, after the parentheses near the end where it says wetlands, open water, steep slopes, in the language earlier tonight, it just had slashed out and the area in rights of way for roads. But since that will now apply still to RU5, RU2, we just left that language as it is currently in code and added in A10 zones, the area and rights of way for roads shall not be subtracted. Similarly, down below, it was the similar change where the proposal tonight, if it were to apply to all zones, would have slashed out and areas dedicated to the public such as parks and public rights of way. This language actually leaves the language as it is currently in code and adds in A10 zones Areas dedicated to the public, such as parks and public rights-of-way, shall not be excluded. And though it was by text, we had Dane look at it and make sure that he felt it would be appropriate. So this would effectually do just A10 zones for the, as
Go back
discussed.
to sensitive areas, if you would, please. Are you saying they are considered or not considered
The only thing this would affect is rights-of-way,
for the roads?
yes,
Okay, thank you.
and those discussions will be coming.
Okay, that helps me be clarified.
This does not pull RU2, RU5 out at all, does it? Or any of the other zones?
As is.
Because the, previously, like currently as code is written, rights-of-way have to be excluded from developable acreage. But, so now what we do is, it's,
Specifically just A10?
yes, A10s, it doesn't count towards their developable acreage, or against, depending on how you look at it. So,
I'm going to look to the middle of the room. Do I have a thumbs up? Okay. Because I think he was representing one of the clients, I believe, so. Okay. Does that satisfy?
So if I can clarify, Mr.
You
Chair.
bet, please.
So this is only applying, we saw multiple graphs or illustrations with different zones. Nixing all of those, we're now just going back to the original zoning question of A10 and saying that their right-of-way is not going to be affected by the total acreage, right? Okay. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
But I just a gut feeling that I think there's more to come.
Yeah.
So, but as far as that one right now, that would suffice. And I think I'm in favor of that myself, so. Any other? I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
It's 10A.
Ordinance 2023-02 in this final presentation, having it apply only to A10 zoning.
Second that.
Moving second, that one there, this is not we don't have to waive the rules on this one. We've already talked about it before, right?
Right.
Dane? So go ahead and pass ordinance 2023-02 as with the amended changes specifically to A10. Is there any, been moved and seconded, is there any discussion? Hearing none to vote, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so it's a 6-1. I voted in favor. Let's go ahead and down on other business before we have our executive session. Yes.
The building permits, I did not apologize, they were not uploaded to the server, I'll get them uploaded.
Okay, and that's usually an information only, just tells you what has actually been happening within the county. Maybe we could probably get January and February, or, on the next meeting, that'd be great. Any of these workshops, conference, anyone attending the UDOT Region 1 workshop? How about UAC building? UAC building conference?
I'm good.
Planning.
I will not be able to attend that one.
Okay, Carl will not. We got Barbara, Sandy, and Catherine.
I'm still undecided. Things have been really crazy at work for the last 2 weeks, so when things calm down, I'll know, but I can't commit at this point.
I'm on the same path. I'll give it consideration, but no commitment.
Do we have an agenda yet for the 5th? Like, do we know how late it goes on the 5th?
UAC Management Conference.
I'll be attending that one.
Put me down for attending that one. It gets me out of something else, and that's really nice. So, I won't tell you guys what it is. But any others, additions, deletions on that one? Okay, NACO, that's the WIR conference that they've added, that will be in St. George. That's at Western Regional. Put me down for that one to go.
Explain that one a little bit more, please.
I would love to have all those acronyms, just are killers, I swear, they are. That one is specifically Western, what does the I stand for again?
Something region.
Yeah, something region, but interstate region. That's where only people within that area of NACO, they come there for, and they have other regions of NACO that they are also meeting for things. Specific issues that they often talk are the rural aspects of our areas within in the west here. They talk a lot about open lands, federal lands, all those things and how to address those. It is here where they started the ideas came that we would get that research center from those support monies that were coming. That's where that came from, was that WIR conference there.
So other states will be coming to St. George?
Yes, all those that are in the western region. Yes. I'm here, I've not been to it yet, but I hear it's really a good one.
Is it open to any of us?
Oh, yeah, anybody.
I'd like to go.
I'm planning on it, but again, can't commit tonight.
Yeah. So, okay, so we got Carl, Sandy, Mark, Barbara, Dave.
Maybe.
Maybe. Put a question mark, Nolan.
TBD.
You know what, we had a discussion at the legislature this week, and because I had a question, like, is it really of value to the county for us to go to some of these things? Like, what are we bringing back to the county for the cost? And it was suggested that there's a lot of voting that happens at these on not so much policy, but on what we support and what we don't support, and that gets taken to the federal government. Like, NACO does support this or not, and if we aren't having a voice at the table, then, you know, maybe there's other regions who have different values or different ideals that gets the majority votes, and so that it's important for us to be there to represent what we believe in and what we want to have happen in that body, so.
They are very expensive, though.
Yeah, and
that's a cost we have to decide whether we'll bear or not. So, yep, I totally agree. Okay, other than that, let's go quick councilman member reports. Carl, could you?
The only thing I will report at this time at least is that I met with the clerk's office. One of my goals is some redistricting in the Logan districts, and we've come up with a plan that we think will work, but we need to get together with Sandy and Barbara in those two districts and make sure that it's compatible with what your thinking is.
Is this one of those districts that actually goes clear to Cove?
Yeah.
I mean, it leapfrogs over several other districts to get to Cove. Where that came from, I am just flabbergasted. What, did you have the GPS tied to some cat that ran or something? It wasn't you?
That was the state. You would have liked our maps.
Okay, appreciate that. Sandy?
I was able to go through a tour of the jail facility this week on Monday. Catherine and I did, and I did a ride-along with the deputy for several hours yesterday, and that was very interesting, but it also gave me a really good idea of how they function and what kind of programs they have and equipment, so that as we approve budget items, I feel like I will be more informed about what they need. Also met on the Fairgrounds Advisory Board, the Audit Committee. I've been to a lot of meetings, and I don't have a lot to report, just that I'm learning, and there's a lot to learn.
Continually. Mark?
Some of the same meetings Sandy mentioned I've attended as well, so enough said there. I've encouraged Sandy to take a ride along on a Friday night. Then you'll get some serious
Monday afternoon
exposure to the real hands-on, but I had a great event a couple weeks ago, or I called it an event because it was a very eventful night, but right along that was arranged. I appreciated your pulling that together, Sheriff. And just wanted to add just a compliment to the first responders and the public safety personnel that we have in Cache County is, I believe, top-notch, none better. And I'm very grateful for the work they do.
Barbara?
No report.
Okay. Nolan?
Two things. The Cache Waste Consortium has continued meeting. We're nearing contract on that. I would like to propose that the company that is going to be doing, as it appears now, but we'll wait till the contract on that waste come and meet with the council and present so that the council is well informed of how that's going to be doing, because that affects most of us here. So put that out, and then also, given on what our agenda's been tonight, I would like to have us focus on maybe a workshop with the planning and zoning so that we can deal with all of these things that are coming with us and get some information from development services as well as from Matt Phillips about roads and everything else, so we have some ideas that we're all aware of on that.
You know, I participated with Sandy in the tour. I cannot believe the amount of people that are employed there, and it was impressive, and we have amazing staff. I felt like we have very professional staff, and it was really great experience. So that's all.
And many of them over and over praised Sheriff Jensen. I'll just
Yeah.
tell you that we heard that from multiple people, that how grateful they were that you are their leader and that we're so lucky in Cache County to have you. So we heard that a lot.
Yep, exactly.
Terrific. I'm glad they let you two out. I actually went on a tour of another jail facility, but they barely, well, this was the animal facility that you talked about. So I didn't quite qualify, but it's close. Anyway, but I went down there and I was, as you were going to report, I was going to have your back on that things are very, very close down there. It's, I talked with the director. There's been just a few little, hiccups and some slow ups, and welcome to COVID and all those issues of shipping and delivery and everything. But it's been quite a process, a learning process that we didn't want to learn, right? But it's just all but there. They've staffed up, ready to go, and they're just the details, computer. It's a neat thing that they've done, and it'll be neat when we open that up that everyone can see that. So, and I appreciate them. I knocked on the door and they came and they didn't shoo me off that fast. So, but okay, at this point I'll entertain a motion to go ahead and go into executive session and if you go ahead and read those two things there.
I'll move that we move into executive session for Utah Code 52-4205, discussion of pending or reasonably imminent litigation, and Utah Code 52-4206, 1E, discussion of the sale of real property.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded that we go into executive session for those following codes and reasons. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. You can wait if you'd like.